But joining me on the line now is Yulia Townsend. Good evening to you, Yulia.
Good evening, guys. Thanks so much for having me. What an awesome concept. I really love it. After dark, more like after bedtime for me, actually, but thanks.
Oh, that's good. Now, before we have a chat to you and find out what's been going on in your busy life, let's have a quick look at Autumn Leaves live at Chambord Castle. Run one of these videos now.
The falling leaves drift by my window. The autumn leaves of red and gold. I see your leaves, the summer kisses, the sunburned hands I used to hold. Since you went away, the days grow long. Soon I'll hear old winter song, but I miss you most of all, my darling. When start to fall, days grow long, and soon I'll hear old winter song, but I miss you most of all, my when autumn leaves start to fall. But I miss you most of all, my darling. When start to fall.
Hey, tell us about that event. I mean, we just got a still up there, but it looked fantastic. Tell us what happened.
Yes, well, it was quite a life-changing experience for me. I think I'm still recovering. It was held at Le Château de Chambord. It was built by Louis XIV. So beautiful architecture. And so I was performing there. I was invited by the producer for Pavarotti, Craig Leon. It's a whole different story how I met him. But it was quite an amazing experience because one other performer who was there was Maeve from Celtic Woman. And there was another lady there, Rita from Israel. So the three of us, we went under the name of Divinas. We released a CD on the record label Decca. And that broadcast that took place, it was a video broadcast. It was translated to PBS TV, which is an American television station, which I think their broadcast numbers are like 51 million people all across America.
Did you all sing in English, or were you singing in a variety of languages?
Variety of languages. So Rita sang in her language. I did some Russian songs. I did La Vie en Rose, which is an Edith Piaf song in French. And English, of course.
So is Russian your native language?
Yes, I was born in Russia.
Okay, so I bet you speak more than 2 languages, don't you? It sounds like you've maybe got a bit of French and German as well.
Yeah, I speak French. You tend to lose languages a bit when you don't speak them for a while, but if I'm thrown into the environment, I can pick it up fairly quickly, yeah.
Yeah, the reason I asked, my son William was singing with the cathedral choir, and he regularly had to sing in German, French, Latin, English.
Yes.
And I was quite amazed how they got their heads around that. When you are looking at the lyrics to a song, you need to understand the meaning, otherwise you can't get this sort of emotion and everything across. So how do you approach this when you're trying to interpret a song and maybe it's in a foreign language?
For sure. Well, firstly, once you've mastered at least 2 languages, then you can get the gist of other languages mostly. You can look at the lyrics and see, oh, okay, well, these words are very similar in, say, another language that I already know. And so before I actually go and, say, translate a song into English or Russian to understand it, I actually try to decipher it from the original native language that the song was written in. So I try to interpret it myself first, and I get the feel by the way that the poem itself sounds, the lyrics sound, because it's got that natural rhythm to it. So it's a whole process, it's not like I just go and punch it into Google Translate. But it's something that I enjoy because I'm a linguist by education.
Now, I noticed in one of the pictures there, photographs, you were playing the guitar. So do you play a couple of instruments as well?
Well, I sing mostly, and I play the guitar. I was taught how to play it at the age of 13. That's fairly, that's it.
I mean, obviously singing is your profession, but do you enjoy playing the instrument?
I do, although I do recognize that my skills have their limit on guitar, and when I hear some of these guys who I played with on guitar, I think, wow, I don't want to touch it.
So were you instructed to or encouraged to play piano to learn your scales and music theory at some stage?
Yeah, kind of, but I was always a bit of a rebel, so whenever there was any classical training involved, I would always rebel against it and just do my own thing, so I never actually never really did any of that.
Are there any singing teachers that you'd like to acknowledge?
Yes, well, there's Emily Meyer, who used to work at the university in Wellington. She did a fair amount of work with me. There's Louise Malloy from Auckland. She was the one who coached me for my debut record, Into the West, which went multi-platinum in New Zealand. I worked a little bit with Dame Malvina Major, but I kind of went on tour fairly quickly after I got together with her, so that didn't quite last. But yeah, those would be the main 3 teachers.
Can you tell us how you navigated the introduction and winning the contract with Sony Music?
To be honest, I think that I would give a lot of credit to people who noticed that I had something workable with. Such people are Pam Morris. She is a fairly prominent figure in Christchurch. She runs the Christmas parade, Santa Parade in Christchurch. So she noticed me singing one of my original songs on CTV. And she then sent that tape of my singing up to Gray Bartlett in Auckland, and Gray essentially executed the deal with Sony. So I can't actually say that I did very much for that. I just was, and so these guys picked up on it. And,
now, of course, the New Zealand market's tiny, and you've got a signing to Sony. Obviously, they want to do something with this talent. So what did they do to promote you internationally?
Well, I think that the genre itself, classical crossover genre, lends itself very well to European markets or Japanese, Asian markets. So Sony New Zealand, to their credit, they did introduce me to Sony Japan, and a Japanese version of Into the West, my first album, was released over there. So that would be my main market after New Zealand. And as far as European markets, my music, which is more like chanson music or Edith Piaf music, did a lot better in Europe for whatever reason. So not so much classical crossover, but more like Edith Piaf style.
Now, somebody else who's local has had great success with this classical crossover is, of course, Hayley Westenra. Have you crossed paths with her?
Very briefly. We obviously both very busy and we live in different countries. But when I got signed to Sony, I know that there was a bit of a record label play, I suppose. Hayley was signed to Universal, and so Sony, to some degree, wanted their own version of classical crossover artists. So I think that's kind of was the idea.
Have you realised much income from, what looked like a very promising career? I mean, it's all very well being signed and going off and touring and what have you, but has it supported you financially?
I think that any artist would tell you, and one of the artists that I can name is Sting. He was talking about this, and he talks about how live performances is what makes the money for musicians. That, any record deal, depending on what kind of deal it is, of course, but, there's a lot of recoupment to do before you can actually start making money. So in my case, I made my money to live off of live performances.
Yes, it's quite a. I've talked to a few people about the realities of touring and what have you, and it can be quite lonely, can't it?
Yes, I think at that point in my life, which is, I was very young, I was 18 when I was signed. I think at that point of my life, it did feel lonely. I think had I signed probably now, I would feel quite grateful to just have a moment of loneliness. But yeah, at the time it was quite hard.
Have you been back home to Russia since you came to New Zealand?
Yes, twice. Mm-hmm.
And what was that experience like?
The first time I went, it was a complete shock. I didn't know where I was or what was going on. It was a cultural shock. When I arrived in New Zealand, I was 16. That was a shock in itself. But then I assimilated into the Kiwi lifestyle so well, I even surprised myself. I started speaking English fairly quickly, then the deal with Sony, then the touring, then, a lot of English speaking and so on. So when I went to Russia, which was 2007, that was after the release of my second album, Montage, which also did really well. It was also a multi-platinum album. So I went to Russia to the environment that I came from, but I was already a changed person. I was already earning money. I was, my own person. So I think I got a bit of a shock. And the most recent time I went, I was actually pregnant with my third child, and that was an experience in itself. I couldn't go anywhere because all I wanted was to lie down and rest.
Did the Russian media, did they pick up on you? Did they know about you as an artist?
The albums were never released in Russia. I have a fair following in Russia due to classical crossover online platforms. So there are people who follow and who do know of me, but to say that I had a concert in Russia, no, I haven't yet.
So, did you learn to speak English in Russia when you were at school, or did you have to pick it up in New Zealand?
Do you know, in the school system in Russia, what they do really well is they teach you the grammar, which is the foundation, I believe, of how the language is structured. So I was really good at that. But when I arrived in New Zealand, I couldn't string two words together. I knew all the grammar, and I could point out what Kiwis were saying wrong in accordance with how the grammar is structured, but I couldn't really speak. So that took me some time, and I went to Kashmir High School for 1 year, which is year 13, and this is where I essentially learned how to speak.
My former wife and I, we used to play about 4 nights a week in Christchurch, actually, as it happens, but we migrated back over to the UK to have children and what have you. And the music went up. Seriously, we had all the intentions of keeping it going, but the reality of me going out to work, 40, 50 hours a week and commuting, and Sonia staying at home and raising the children, that seriously, the music got parked for 15 years. What's been your experience of parenting and performing?
Well, actually, I knew fairly quickly when I fell pregnant with my first child, I knew that I wanted to be involved with my children, at least in the first years of their development, which means involvement as a full-time parent. So I actually put quite a few projects on hold, and one would say that for some people it may be professional suicide, but for me it was the best thing that I could have done for my family. And my youngest child is now 1.5 years old, and I'm now starting to ease back into active performance and recording and touring and so on. And I'm so grateful that I made this choice to cater to the children first.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I can quite understand that. So you've got a 1.5-year-old. How old are the other two?
8 and 5.
Goodness me, you're right in the thick of it, aren't you? So, oh goodness me, I can't even get my head around parenting at that level, and still being able to do some music. So, do you have anything coming up that you'd like to tell us about, or something you're working on?
I think that the year 2020 is going to be one of the defining years for me. There are some projects that I can't yet speak of because they're sort of larger projects which require a little bit of confidentiality at the moment. But I'm working on some new material, and I've re-engaged with all the people that I am grateful to for introducing me to music. So I'm working with those people as well. Unfortunately, I can't really say what those projects are, but yes, I'm definitely getting more active in the music scene in the year to come.
Now, the audience didn't see this, but I just saw a photograph come up, which we were pre-selecting, of your music at a CD store. And I do wonder what it's like when you go in and you find yourself in the bargain bin. Have you had that happen?
Oh my goodness, was it in year 2016, I think, I was traveling from Christchurch to Nelson to do a performance at the Playhouse Theatre. I have a wonderful relationship with Nick, who runs it. And so we stopped, what's the town just before Nelson? It's a tiny little town, starts with M, something, mama.
Is it Motueka?
I can't even...
I'm not sure, but
no.
yeah.
No, it was something else. Anyway, tiny little town. And I don't know what possessed me. I went into a second-hand store, and there it was, my album on the shelf for like $2. And of course I had to buy it.
Oh, great stuff.
And the person who was traveling with me, he was like, do you recognize the person? And it was just a bit of a laugh, really. But, that's what happens. The album is, centuries old.
Have you pulled up to a theatre and seen your name up in lights, outside the theatre?
Say that again?
Have you pulled up to a theatre to do a performance, and you're on your main bill, and have you seen your name up in lights on the outside of a theatre?
Yes, I have done that, and I usually take a photo.
I bet you do. How did it feel the first time you saw that?
I'm not really sure. It was It's as if it wasn't happening with me. And I'm probably one of those people who never really fully associated myself with my stage persona. I'm quite detached from what I do on stage. I'm a very different person in real life.
Yeah, quite a few artists say that. Now, I understand you've undergone something of a spiritual transformation. We'll just conclude with this, actually, but tell us a bit about that.
Yes, well, my mum died in 2016 from breast cancer, and I think that really transformed my life. It split it into before and after. And what happened is I started getting glimpses of different reality. I'm not sure how many of you will be able to understand what I'm talking about. Maybe some of you have experienced that in your lives as well. But I started to really get the gist of what really matters. And so as a follow-up of that experience, it was actually a number of them happening over a period of time as I was grieving for my mother. As an outcome was my ego detached. So actually I do not associate myself with my egoic self. I don't know how much sense that makes to you, but Eckhart Tolle actually explains quite a bit about it if you have a minute to read up.
Well, I do think that we can play your music video fairly shortly, actually, but not quite yet. So I need to ask you about some other things. Now, you've been awarded the keys to the city of Christchurch. I didn't even know that we had this civic ceremony. So tell us about that occasion.
Yes, well, it was quite a few years ago, but I'm still trying to work out what they unlock. So, I mean, I'd like to know, because just in case I need to use them. But it seems like the keys to the city are given to people who may not be from the city originally, but they do some, things for the city that, like for example, Greta Thunberg was awarded the keys to the city of Montreal. Of course, she's not from Montreal at all, but she now can have that title. But if any one of you knows what they do, I'd love to know.
So who awarded them to you?
There was Gary Moore.
Oh, it was quite a long time ago, wasn't it?
Yes, it was 2004 or 2005. But you know why? I thought that I'd throw that in because actually I'm based in Christchurch. For those people who don't know, I'm based in Christchurch. So I thought I'd throw it in that I've got the keys to the city. So if you want to invite me for any performances or anything like that, I'll come and unlock your hearts.
That's a very great offer, and I'm sure some people will take you up on that. Now, you must have been involved in the New Zealand Music Awards because you've had a platinum or more than one platinum selling album. So tell us about that.
Yes, both my albums were Sony Music and To the West and Montage were multi-platinum selling albums. They both debuted at #1 on New Zealand music charts. And in 2005, I received 2 New Zealand Music Awards, which was Highest Selling Album and Best Female Artist. But you know what? When I was meant to walk the red carpet, I actually got I wasn't sure why I would do that, so I didn't do that. And in fact, I wanted to escape the ceremony because it was just too frightening. But nevertheless, it's a part of my history, and I'm really grateful to all the people who contributed to this success, because certainly behind the name Yulia, it's not just me. It's a whole ton of people.
Yes, that's very often the case, isn't it? Hey, thank you so much for joining us this evening. It's been great to speak with you, and we hope to do so again. And before we say goodbye, we're going to, I'll say goodbye to you now, but we're going to play your video, or one of them, if we can. Hey, Yulia Townsend, thank you so much for joining us this evening here on After Dark.
Thanks, guys.
Here I am in Paris, in Montreux. And in Montreux, there is an area where the studio where Edith Piaf and Michel Legrand and many other artists recorded. It's called Studio Davout. And if you look forward, there's a black sign with white writing saying Le Davout. This is where the studio is. And for the past couple of days, I was there recording songs for the upcoming project.
I can bring it where you are if you only say you care.